Talk Podcast.
Welcome to the Pep Talk Podcast, where you can earn continued education anytime, anywhere. I'm your host, Michelle Andrews. Remember, if you want to earn continued education credit, you can purchase the course quiz from the show notes. You must pass the quiz to download your certificate of completion that you can keep for your records. These hours are TISHA CEUs if you're from Texas, and for ASHA, they count as professional development hours. We are going to learn about pre-linguistic skill development from my guest, Laura Brown. Hi there, Laura.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you. Let me tell everyone a little bit more about you. Here is her bio. Laura is a pediatric speech pathologist, early intervention specialist, and mom of 2 little boys. Laura has 15 years of experience as a pediatric SLP. She previously worked as a contractor to provide state-based early intervention services and currently owns a private practice in Ohio, working exclusively with children under 4. Laura believes in a holistic approach to early intervention therapy that includes movement, play, and social emotional support. She practices relationship-based therapy and prioritizes joyful child-led interactions and focuses on connection over compliance. Laura is the founder of Early and Bright Online Learning, which offers free resources and several online professional development courses for pediatric SLPs, including the First 50 Words course for SLPs, Speech Sound Disorders in Early Intervention, AAC in Early Intervention, the Daily Routines course, and Confidently Co-Regulating. I have to say, I have taken her First Words course, and it is amazing. I took it like a year or 2 ago, and it's honestly been a game changer for my practice when I get those little ones that aren't talking yet. I even, for those that you can see the video, I bound one of her books too. I refer to it all the time. Highly recommend it. But you're also going to learn a lot from her today, but make sure you check out all of her other stuff too. She's amazing. I am so excited to dig into this content here for you guys. Before I do, we do have to go over the course formalities. Laura's financial disclosures. She is the owner and founder of Early and Bright LLC, doing business as Early and Bright Online Learning. She profits from the sales of all Early and Bright courses and paid resources. No financial disclosures. My financial disclosures, I have a Teachers Pay Teachers Boom Learning store under Pep Talk LLC. I'm the founder and manager of the Pep Talk Podcast, and I have my private practice in New Braunfels, Texas, Pep Talk Pediatrics. And my non-financial disclosures, Speech Arcade is an in-kind sponsor for this podcast. A little shout out to the owner of Speech Arcade, who's Jennifer Gethers. She actually is doing really cool things. You may have seen her. She's the Good News Girl on Instagram or TikTok. She has millions of followers right now. She always has a video every day of something happy. So it's just a really fun thing if you want to follow along. The Good News Girl. Anyways, that was kind of off topic, but she's just an amazing person. Our learner objectives for this course. Number 1, we'll state the 4 pre-linguistic skill areas for identifying support needs and selecting evidence-based interventions. Number 2, we'll name 4 evidence-based strategies for supporting emerging communicators. Number 3, we'll identify 3 components of a strengths-based approach for supporting young emerging communicators. Okay, all that's done now. Time to get into the fun stuff. All right, so Laura, I'm so excited to have you here and to chat about this. One thing, even before we jump into kind of going over the learner objectives, I have a question about just how you approach pre-linguistic skills to parents. I have a lot of parents that come in and are just like, my child's not saying words. I want them to say words. They're just ready to jump to words. How do you actually first approach that with parents to kind of get them on board with some of these foundational skills?
Well, the first really big thing to me is shifting the conversation away from thinking only about spoken words into thinking more broadly about communication. That's always like a first really important conversation to have, to first of all think about all of the amazing ways that their child is already communicating so that we can build on that. And then also laying a foundation of other skills that we can also build on. So really kind of, and I think like different analogies of like building the house or like literally anything you want to use, like stepping stones, where we really do need to lay these foundational skills down so we can build on them. And if the parent is really focused on the spoken language piece, and most parents are, That's okay. And we're also going to talk about the skills that we need to build on to get to that effective symbolic communication, which is often spoken language, but also may come in another form, like using a high-tech AAC device, for example. So shifting the conversation to communication from the beginning also opens that door for AAC, which is always a part of my therapeutic practice from the very beginning, introducing those all AAC in all of its forms to support communication. So I find that that's a really good place to start. And then just really setting those expectations that, hey, these are some foundational skills we're going to build on. And we're going to build on all the things your child is already doing. And we have the same goal. We're going to the same place. And let me show you how to get there, basically.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy about the house and just foundational skills, because I think saying specific things like that to parents is so helpful, because they are just in that one track mind of like words. I want my child to talk, and that's all of our goal. We want that if we can, but yeah, kind of backing down and saying, okay, let's see where they're at and let's take a little step from there and work on those foundation skills.
Yeah.
Sometimes parents really love that. They're like, oh, this is something I can do. I can work on imitating, or I can work, we'll get into that, but we'll work on all these specific things. And they're like, maybe that's more manual. And sometimes it can even be a little bit more, put the parent at ease a little bit more than just like say a word.
Right.
That can be stressful if the kid's like not ready, not there yet.
Yeah.
And yes,
if you really want an analogy, we could like maybe a table, because we're going to talk about 4 pillars of pre-linguistic skills. Okay. So we need like all the legs of the table. I don't know. I'll think on that. I'm sure I'll think of something better, but there's 4 pillars. And so whatever analogy you want to use, but we're going to go into like the details of what this framework looks like next.
Yes. And I love that you have an alliteration here. I love a good alliteration. Of course, the Pep Talk podcast. I love alliteration. And so we can dig into those now. Yours, they all start with I, right?
Yes. And this model, which is the 4I model for pre-linguistic skill development, came from my brain's need to organize all of the information that was floating around in my head. All of the research about the foundational skills for language development, all of the evidence-based interventions that we know support language development. I had all of these, so much professional development, so much experience, all of these different strategies and theories of language development, they're floating around in my brain, right? And I needed a way to systemize all of that information. So that is where the 4I model came from. It's really rooted in the social pragmatic theory of language development, which focuses on connection as the foundation of communication and the importance of learning language through interactions. And for young children, that's learning language through interactions with their caregivers. So we're rooted in that theory of language or social pragmatic development. And we are drawing from 2 big piles of information and research. The first is the research on the foundational skills that we know support functional language. So we're thinking about gestures and other early forms of communication. We're thinking about the importance of engagement and shared attention, thinking about the huge importance of language comprehension. So we know there's these themes that come up over and over again as far as what skills are important for taking our kids from where they come in with us and getting them to that functional communication, using symbolic communication, and also have this other big pile of information, which is all of the evidence-based strategies that we have sometimes decades of research on in terms of what is going to move the needle for our emerging communicators. So what strategies are effective in supporting these kids and taking them from those maybe even a pre-intentional or early intentional communicator to becoming effective symbolic communicators. So taking all of that information, I kind of organized it, and I love a mnemonic device. So it became the 4 I's, which stand for interaction, intent, input, and imitation. Yeah. And I can go into like, do you want me to go into like a little more on each area now?
Yeah, let's describe each of them. Yeah. And then I think the next part, then you kind of go into, then after you kind of describe them all, then let's kind of go back through each one and talk about the evidence-based strategies.
Yeah, okay. So interaction is where we identify support needs in the areas of engagement and reciprocity. And this is always going to be where we need to start if a child has support needs in this area. I describe this model as being the ingredients, not the recipe, meaning that the model is not linear. Like we don't have to move from one eye to the next eye to the next eye. But we do need to have that foundation of engagement and reciprocity before we're going to see success and growth in those other areas. So in this area, we're going to select strategies that are aligned with building an authentic connection through those joyful child-led interactions. And we'll talk more about exactly what that looks like because we're going to get into the intervention piece in the next bit. The next I is intent, and this is where we identify support needs in the area of intentional communication, and we select strategies that are aligned with expanding the early forms and functions of communication. So when we think about communication, we have the forms and we have the function, and intent kind of brings all of that together to focus on, first of all, how are they already communicating and how can we build on that? How can we teach and model gestures and other forms of early communication? And how can we support this child and family in communicating for a variety of purposes across a variety of contexts too. The next I is input, and this is where we identify support needs in the area of language comprehension. So we're going to select strategies for providing quality input to help children tune into language and make connections about meaning. So this is where we think about how to really provide that quality language input to grow language comprehension, to help children build their semantic representations, and so that they can eventually take the language that they understand and turn it into language that they can use. And then the final I is imitation, and this is where we identify support needs in the area of imitating early sounds, actions in play, simple words, gestures, maybe even actions in nursery songs. We can think there are lots of ways to build the skill, but we kind of look at where they are with all of those areas of imitation, and then we select strategies that invite children to go back and forth with us. And imitation is how we build their repertoire of sounds. It's how we build that consonant inventory, which is another one of those important indicators of future success with spoken language. And then it's how we can build actions that are help children participate. So imitation is how we can show children how to participate in their daily routines. It's how we can help to engage and give them ideas for how to play and engage with us in those play-based interactions as well.
Very cool. Yes. Imitation is one I talk to parents about probably the most. At least I use that I word quite a bit. I was going to go back and see if I can kind of repeat that back in my own words just to make sure, and you can clarify, maybe make sure I am describing it correctly. Like interaction might be like kind of any kind of back and forth type of thing. Is that kind of more what that means, like in a simpler form?
Yeah, and it's kind of just general engagement. So
not even words and sounds. It could be
right. We're paying attention to the same thing. We're here together. You're noticing me. I'm noticing you. We can go back and forth. And even if we're not talking, we're going back and forth in our play. Maybe we're like rolling a toy back and forth, or I'm putting a block on and you're putting a block on, or I'm building the blocks and you're knocking them down more simply, and I build it again and you knock it down. That's a really simple example of going back and forth, but it's really that foundation of what's in the research is called social motivation. So we want our kids to be socially engaged. We want them to be learning how to maintain that interaction and how to extend that interaction. Those are like our first little conversations when we go back and forth and play. And that's how I usually explain it to parents. Like, we need to teach what communication looks like in this interaction first. So we need to get that back and forth interaction going, and then we're going to add to that and build on that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you described it really well. I was just going to say, how can I explain this to a 5-year-old? Like, I'm trying to even like quick little things in my head. And then intent is more like maybe like a little step up, like they're intentionally like pointing at something or handing you
Yeah.
something? Would that
So
be okay?
like, whereas interaction would like usually be like where we would talk about like joint attention or joint engagement and like shared attention. Then when we move on to intent, we're thinking about gestures. We're thinking about whether they're using eye gaze, whether they're using vocalizations, whether they're combining some of those to communicate. We're thinking about whether a child is pre-intentional or pre-symbolic or where they are on that scale as well. So a lot of kids that I get are in that pre-intentional phase. They're not using any conventional forms of communication yet. So we have lots of forms and functions to expand on for those kids.
Yeah. Okay. And then intent, I guess more that I'm sorry, input. Input
Yeah,
is more like what they're understanding receptive language,
right.
building on their knowledge of words before they can say the word
Exactly.
kind of thing. And then imitation, that one's pretty, self-explanatory,
Yes,
imitating.
yes.
But
Yeah.
that there are different forms, it's not just imitating a word, it can be
Mhm.
imitating, gross motor gestures, fine motor gestures, sound effects, sounds, and then into like words and stuff.
Exactly.
I love working on that type of thing with kiddos. That's
Yes.
one of my favorite thing to work on, those like 2 and 3-year-olds, like not, saying words
Yes.
yet.
Yes.
Getting into nursery singing songs with
Yeah,
gestures, and those are things I love to do a lot in therapy as well.
totally. And almost all of our kids that we see that are under 3 and 4 who have communication needs need support in the imitation area. For our kids who have those really just like that who are coming in with good engagement, the intent and the input kind of follow from that. We have work to do in like kind of shaping what that looks like and optimizing those strategies. But when a child is able to be engaged and like play with you and go back and forth with you, they are kind of like automatically starting to find ways and are automatically motivated to communicate with you. So you see those other areas kind of following from interaction in that way. I find we have a lot of kids that come in needing like a lot of support with all the areas. And then we have another group of kids who would be like more of our late talkers who they have good interaction skills. They have lots of ways that they're already communicating. They're really good at using gestures and other forms of communication. They understand language. Their parents will tell you all this. They're communicating with me. They understand me. They're just not talking. So those late talker kids were really focused on that imitation piece. But for example, like a child with autism is probably going to need more support in all of these areas. And a child with global developmental needs or a child with a genetic difference is probably going to need support in all of these areas. And one of the reasons that I wanted to create a model like this is because it helps us target our interventions for kids who do have scattered skills, who maybe have some strong skills in one area but need support in another area, or they have a few skills in each area but we need to build on those skills. And it really helps you kind of figure out what the areas of need are and then how we can build on that and develop those skills. Because once we have these four, we have a child who is taking off with their functional language, whether that is spoken language and spoken words or another form of symbolic communication. Over and over again, once we have these skills well established, we have a child who is at the next level for their language development. They're starting to put phrases together. They're expanding their vocabulary and adding new words every single day. So we have this framework to create that really like strong foundation for where we need to be to get to that next step.
Yes. Okay. And this is so great, even thinking about explaining it to parents and stuff too. Like there's a pathway that we're taking,
Mhm.
it might look like I'm playing with your child, but let me tell you why, and
Yes.
that's what I get into with therapy too. It's like, especially if it's like the mom or dad or caregiver is in the room, sometimes I'm always trying to like explain and, while I do it, because it's like, I look like I'm playing, but I have a reason for what I'm doing.
Right,
And I
right.
do think having parents really understand what you are doing and why, like,
Mhm.
is key, because, they are with that child way more than I am, or,
Mhm.
a therapist is, once or twice a week.
Right.
explaining this to them and having carryover at home, is key. Okay, so I'm excited to get into the evidence-based strategies for these. I, especially kind of this first one here, I'm thinking about interaction, and I was thinking about, a lot of my kiddos with autism or that just kind of don't have that piece yet. I find this one to be maybe the most challenging because I feel like a circus clown. Like, what are you interested in? What are we going to do? I want you to like interact with me. And sometimes I just run to mom and hide in her lap or something, or I don't know. I'm excited to hear some more ideas on that interaction piece. So let's dig into that one first.
Okay. The biggest thing about these strategies is that they're very, very simple. And the way I talk to parents about this is that it's when we are working on these foundational areas of social engagement and reciprocity, it's more about changing what we're doing than about trying to change what the child is doing. So this is where we talk about the importance of following a child's lead and tuning into what they're interested in and kind of joining them in their world instead of trying to pull them into what we're doing or whatever goal we have. So the first kind of strategy that I want to highlight is supported joint engagement. And I like to focus on this idea of joint engagement instead of the more, I feel like it's more like a popular way to talk about this. That would be joint attention, because we think a lot about like the importance of joint attention and in early communication skills, but joint attention tends to be thought of in a pretty rigid way, which involves eye gaze and involves like looking at an item that you want and then looking back at your communication partner and then creating that kind of triangle of eye gaze. And the reason I prefer to focus on joint engagement instead of joint attention is because that might often turn into like kind of like trying to shape eye gaze or trying to like get the child to look at our eyes and kind of like create that triangle, when we know that a lot of autistic children are uncomfortable with looking people directly in the eye. So we can kind of get the same benefit of shared attention, which is really the important skill when we think about supported joint engagement. So like I said, this is about changing what we're doing to support the interaction and to create a more quality interaction, and one that a child is going to be motivated to be a part of and want to be with us. So I talk about becoming a partner in play and becoming a partner in communication. So I'm going to refer to my handout because if you know me, I like love a handout and I have a handout for everything. So I have my be a play partner and be a communication partner handout in front of me. Also it's eternally on the free resource library. So if you want to
link that in the show notes, and then I can even link it in the chat here for those live.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen one of her, all of your handouts and visuals are wonderful. So I bet it's beautiful.
Like if you have been in the early and bright world, you understand how my brain works. Like I need systems, frameworks, and like information to be organized, and I like for it to be pretty too. That's just an added bonus. Okay, so being a play partner, using fewer redirections. So we know that the quality of engagement goes down when we try to redirect a child's interest instead of joining in what they're interested in. So that's where we talk about redirecting. Like if a child's interested in something, even if it's a unconventional thing, we're going to have more success joining them there than trying to redirect them away to some other activity. Following their lead, so seeing how they're choosing to play, joining in, noticing what they're noticing, playing the way they're playing, imitating what they're doing. And we're going to talk a little more about that, but that's a really good way to get a child to notice you, is to imitate their actions, body movements, and vocalizations. So bounce it back and forth. So when they do something and you imitate them, wait and maybe even give them that expectant look and see if they're going to do it again. And even if you just go back and forth in that interaction of imitating the same action or imitating the same sound, you are building that engagement and that shared interest. And then building on their strengths and interests. So noticing what they're good at and what they like, and thinking about the activities they prefer and how to add those into what you're doing to make the activities more engaging and motivating. Then we are moving over to talking about being a communication partner. So asking fewer questions, using more commenting, talking about what catches their interest, honoring all communication. So really thinking about all of the ways they're already communicating with you, saying the words you think they would want to say. So kind of providing that language model, and modeling without expectation. So we're modeling language without expecting them to repeat it back to us or having any expectation on our end about what they're going to do. So I think these are like a really good example of when I say like this is about changing what we're doing instead of what they're doing to support them in the interaction. Those are like some really concrete examples of what that looks like.
I love that. I love that it is like less pressure on the kids. Change how we are interacting with them. I love to say, to just make sure I mentioned to the caregiver that like you're not doing anything wrong, because I feel like everyone's like, oh well, then should I have been doing this, should I have been doing that, and it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be intentional. Like in some of these things you might be doing these already sporadically, just
Right.
being a good caregiver. When you set aside time to intentionally do these things
Mhm.
and do it more often, and you're doing it in a way where you're like thinking about it extra, it's a totally different thing.
Right.
So yeah, I just like to always say that too, because I've had so many moms are like, oh, it's my fault, and it's just like, it's not your fault, it's not your fault.
Right. Right.
You love your child, you brought them here for speech, like you are
And
wonderful.
we know that. We know
Yeah.
that parenting does not cause language
Yes,
delays.
there's nothing that says that. Yeah. I know. I'm like, unless you just have never spoken to your child once and they're 5, like it's not your fault. It's
Right.
not your
Right.
fault. But yes. Oh, I wanted to ask you about. So you mentioned less redirecting.
Mhm.
Um, I have some kiddos so I have a small therapy room. It's here where I'm
Mhm.
at. I may have too many toys visible because I have some kiddos with really short attention spans, and
Mhm.
so um, I try to do them choose something or child led,
Right.
but it's like 3 seconds, 3 seconds, and or as soon as I do approach them to try to just do what they're doing, then they're on to the next thing. Maybe it could be like I need to set my room up differently, or do you have any tips for that? I guess.
That's tricky, and that is such a common a common thing that comes up, especially when we're working with really young kids for a variety of reasons. But there is research to show that having fewer toys available or visible can kind of increase the quality of engagement and the quality of play. That's one thing to think about. I know that's hard. I've been like in your exact shoes, like tiny therapy room. Like you have to get really creative. You do.
Yeah.
And the other thing that would also require a lot of creativity in a small space that does increase engagement and the quality and the length of engagement is using gross motor play with those kids who have the short attention spans. There's a growing body of evidence to suggest that like those big body movements support the quality of engagement, they support social communication skills. So I'm thinking about like if you have a sensory gym, that's amazing, but that's not everyone. If you're in the house, if you're in someone's home, can we get the cushions off the couch and jump on them? Can we make a blanket into a swing? I love just like simple games where either like me or the caregiver is like tossing the child up and like catching them, depending on like your physical willingness to participate in an activity like that. But like maybe the caregiver can be the person who's doing it. Or even just a child running down the hallway and jumping into your arms, and then they go back to the other end and run back to you and jump in your arms again. So these gross motor activities can be really simple things. Even I would even be thinking about nursery songs that are kind of like more focused on like the big body movements. So like Ring Around the Rosie, where we're like actually walking and falling down, which you could do that in a small room, or
Yeah.
like the walking, hop, 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 stop, stop, stop. That it's called like walking, I think is the song. So nursery songs that include that gross motor, big body movement can be really helpful for that as well.
That's really helpful. Oh, I like those songs that you mentioned. One I do a lot, but really I guess this might be not quite full body. I mean, we sit on the ground and do row, row, row your boat,
Yeah.
and I like pull their arms and like their whole body moves.
Yeah,
And like
absolutely.
that.
Love
My
it.
kiddos
Yes.
don't like, especially if they like kind of some deep pressure, because it
Mhm.
does kind of, gently kind of pull and tugs on their
Oh,
arms.
yes.
Sometimes kids like really like that one.
Oh, yeah.
But I like the ones you suggested are really good too. I'm going to add those in.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. And then especially if you're a therapist going into someone's home, if you're doing home health,
Yeah.
or maybe even at a school, just somewhere where maybe you have less control of the environment, it could be worth a conversation with the parent of like, maybe a room that has less, toys everywhere.
Right.
I'm a mom of 3. Like I get it, my playroom and where I probably, if a therapist came into my home, that it would be probably chaos. But
Right. Right.
maybe find a place that isn't too busy with toys, or I don't
Yes.
know, whatever. Everyone's home might be a little different, and maybe we
Yeah.
would have room for that or not. But
Yeah.
if it's possible, okay, that's really helpful. Okay, let's get into the next one, intent.
Yeah.
So some evidence-based strategies for intent.
Okay, so this is where, again, we're working on early forms of communication and all of the functions of communication. So let's break that down a little bit so we have context. Early forms, again, are going to be gestures, eye gaze, vocalizations, and the functions of communication are broad. And this is another conversation that's really important to have with caregivers, thinking about beyond requesting or beyond asking for what we want or need. How can we help the child to protest, to comment on what's going on, to share information with us, to ask questions, to make choices, to answer questions, to participate in those social routines like saying hi and bye and I love you and good night. So there's lots of different ways that we communicate with others. And I think, especially from the caregiver's perspective, they tend to come in thinking, like, I want my child to be able to tell me what they want. Usually it comes with a side of frustration and some sort of strife in the home over them not being able to communicate their wants. And we definitely want to work on that. And we want to educate on all of the other functions of communication that are also important. So, one of the ways that I like to help caregivers think about this and use this strategy for myself as well, when I'm interacting with the child, is to think about all of the ways they're already communicating, to honor that communication, to respond accordingly. And then once we've acknowledged and responded, then we can add on those other language models, whether we're modeling gestures or sign language or words or phrases to match their message, to match what they were trying to communicate with their body or with their eyes or with their vocalizations. So, really kind of coaching parents on what that looks like, helping them notice all of the ways that their child is already communicating. It's a great way to kind of highlight what's already going well. And it also gives a really good place to kind of build on those skills and help the parents learn how to model language to match their child's communication messages, which is really, really effective for supporting language development. So that's kind of like the first strategy, I would say, acknowledging and responding, and then teaching parents to model language to match their child's message. Kind of talking to parents about being a communication detective and what that means and how to notice the cues, even if they're not conventional. So even if the child's not using eye gaze or gestures, how are they using their body to communicate? How are they using their facial expressions or their giggles or their cries to communicate? So really thinking about that piece as being the foundation for growing intentional communication. And then, of course, we can always add in those communication temptations that create additional opportunities for the child to communicate. I like to, which you took the course. So, like, one of the things that we talked about in the course is like create and wait. So, like, create an opportunity and then use that wait time, that extended wait time, 5-10 seconds even, to see how they're going to communicate. And I like to think more beyond like the environmental arrangement piece. So, like, I think when we think about communication temptations, the first thought is like, okay, I'll put it high on the shelf where they can't reach it. I'll put it in this container that they can't open. And those are great. But there's lots of other options. And some kids that I work with, If I only use environmental arrangement, which ask me how I know, this is like going back to my roots of when I was first getting started and learning all of this, like they get tired of it and they don't want to like play that game anymore where they have to like ask for the thing they want because you made it hard to get. So sprinkling in these other ways to create communication temptations can be helpful. So some of the other things I talk about are creating a silly problem. So like doing something like giving them the cup, but it doesn't have any water or milk in it. So like they have to be like, okay, what the heck? Where's my actual drink? Or putting them in the bathtub, but not putting any water in it. Or giving them paper, but no crayons to work with. And then beyond that, doing something unexpected. So like some examples I give are like taking a sip of their drink. Like, why are you doing like things that make them think like, what are you doing? Or like doing something silly, like trying to put like their hat on my head or trying to put shoes on my hands, things that they like kind of know are wrong and gives them a chance to kind of communicate whether they think it's funny or whether they try to fix you or whatever. It's kind of creates that chance. And then finally, giving them choices is another good way to create that opportunity, which is another super effective early language strategy that caregivers can easily implement as well in lots of different activities. So definitely teaching on that. And then finally, I talk about pausing in the context of familiar routines. So using those natural opportunities in the routines that you do every day, whether it's pausing before you open the back door to see like how are they going to tell you they want to go out, whether it's pausing before you hand them their snack or their drink and seeing how are they going to tell me to like hand it over, using that pause in your routines where they know what to expect. You use that kind of wait time, give them a chance to communicate for what they know is coming, basically.
Yeah. I love how you just call it wait time or giving them a chance or pausing. I think that's just beautifully stated because I think even back, maybe grad school, I don't know. I feel like maybe back in the olden days or something, people used to say like withhold and wait and like make them
Mm-hmm.
say it. Or like, maybe parents might think like I need to just like wait and force it and make it stressful. But yeah, after taking your course and working with kids for a while too, like I definitely really encourage parents to, um, it is like that 5 or 10 seconds or it's a
Yeah.
pause. You're allowing them time
Mm-hmm.
to kind of get it together and maybe like do
Yeah.
an intended
Yes.
communicative attempt. And that it's not, and if not, move on. You say it or model it,
Right.
right? It's
Exactly.
not, we're not gonna, withhold their favorite item
Yes.
until they say it because that's gonna just cause stress. And then that's not a good environment to build language when you're stressed and crying over wanting your teddy bear or whatever it is.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up because you really brought it full circle of like, okay, what if they don't do anything? Exactly. You model it for them, you give it over, like we're not withholding, we're not like making them upset. We're giving them a little time and a little chance, and then we're gonna follow through with the thing.
Yes, yes. Because then I do see the opposite though, where parents are like, bear, bear, say teddy bear, and then there's no pause, and it's like pause for 5 or 10 seconds, and maybe they will say it. So there's definitely that. There's kind of two extremes that sometimes happen. So I think
Right.
being right here in the middle of that appropriate little pause, allowing them to have that moment to get their gears going and say something or reach or what point, whatever, is magical. It really works
Yes.
for lots of kids. Wonderful. Okay. Was there another point on that one? Or are we moving on
No, we
to,
can move on.
okay.
Let's
All right.
talk about
Going
input.
on to input. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So input is where we are thinking about how to build language comprehension, and how we build language comprehension is with quality and quantity input, and both are important. So we want kids to have a lot of input, and we also want that input to be high quality, but we don't need to talk all day. This is like one of my soapboxes, like shifting away from, I don't like, I hear like talk about everything you're doing, like that narrating style or like sports casting. I just feel like that's like, it's a lot to like tell parents to like talk all the time about what they're doing. So I kind of like shift from that, and I talk about the importance of contingent input. So that is input, which is modeling words, phrases, and simple sentences that are connected to what the child is interested in, what they're showing is catching their attention, what they're already doing, and the ways that they're already communicating. So using their communicative cues, like we talked about already, to model language. That the name for that strategy is linguistic mapping. And that is often one of the first strategies that I teach parents, because it, number one, teaches them to pay attention to the ways their child is already communicating and respond. And then it gives them ideas for how to model language to match that message. And that's going to be really meaningful input, really motivating input, and input that once the child progresses towards being able to use spoken language or symbolic communication, will be able to use right away, because it's language that already matches the things that they're communicating for.
Awesome. I love the quality, the quantity piece that you added there, because yeah, I feel like some parents are like, do I talk to them all day about, what do I even say? Like, I just need to talk nonstop. And yeah, it's like, if the child actually doesn't have that engagement, I guess, piece, and isn't like, it's not about what the child's looking at, like, then it is kind of just noise in their ears. It's not actually something that they're learning. They're just hearing you chat. Words, then they are, I guess, listening to, the patterns of language a little bit, but at the same time, that's going to wear you out. And being intentional and having that quality into the quantity piece. Yes.
I like to highlight, like, these are both important, but let's focus on quality, and you'll get enough quantity if you focus on these like 3 areas of providing contingent input.
Yes. Let's see. I think, and did you mention about parentees? I think that
was our other thing we wanted to talk about as far as providing input. So 2 things we want are using child-directed speech, or parentees, or motherese. It goes by a lot of different names, but remembering that we want our language models to be rich in intonation. We want them to also be grammatically correct. So we want to use adult-like grammatical models, but we can shorten and simplify, but the grammar should still be adult-like. We don't want to use that like telegraphic type of speech, like baby go night night. The baby goes night night. Like, we use that proper grammatical marker, and that gives them information about language that is important to their language development, even if they're not using a lot of spoken language yet.
Yeah. So even if they might model back to you, baby go night night, but you to model, yes, baby goes night night.
Exactly.
So that's that difference between parentees, which is research based, and then versus baby talk, which is not. Yeah. So, and even that can even go into, so there's the grammar, but also even articulation sounds. Sometimes it's like, no, wait, oh, baby, like the kind of true baby sounds even.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's not parentees, that's baby talk. But parentees is grammatically correct sentences and sounds, but that higher pitched and lots of intonation in your voice.
That drawn out vowels is a big one.
Yeah. Your Mary Poppins voice or whatever. And I've had a few parents, it could be stereotypical if like that a mom would be good at that or something, but it's not. I have plenty of moms or dads or grandparents that they're like, that's just not my personality. I'm just real, like, I'm not like bubbly, I guess, or something. Like, they're nice and everything, but like, I don't talk like that, but I just try to encourage, still be you. I don't be a different person, but maybe while you're reading a book, try to get a little more into character. That doesn't have to be who you are all the time.
Right.
So just kind of giving a little push of encouragement that it really does help get their attention. And maybe when you are working on trying to increase their language, you could do a little bit of this as you can to still be you. You don't have to turn into a new person, but
we need to work with the family, the child, and the caregiver in front of us, and making it work for them.
Yeah. And maybe they just need practice feeling comfortable talking that way to their child, because maybe they just haven't, that maybe this is their first kid. They aren't used to, like, they don't work with kids. They don't see kids often. They're like, oh, I just talk to them like an adult or something.
Right.
Maybe practicing being comfortable, kind of using that voice, and, starting out maybe songs and books or
songs and books. Yes, that's exactly what I'm
saying. To kind of, because everyone kind of does it a little bit when they're singing those. So that can be a good one too.
Definitely.
Awesome. All right, let's dive into imitation.
Okay, so this is where we're thinking about the importance of imitation for taking our semantic knowledge. So, those are the words and phrases and sentences that we understand, and turning them into words and phrases and sentences that we can use. So, we are thinking about building blocks here. So, we're thinking about the importance of a child being able to imitate actions in play, imitate gestures, imitate actions in a nursery song, imitate simple sounds and symbolic noises and exclamatory words, and then like building up to the point where they're able to imitate simple words. So, imitation is how we can increase a lot of things, really. It's how we can, first of all, get a child engaged in going back and forth with us in something like a nursery song. So they can do the actions with us. That's a great opportunity for reciprocity and shared attention. We can also use imitation strategies to build a child's ability to use gestures. So, imitating gestures in context for them, ones that they can use to communicate. And then also, it's how we can build that consonant inventory. So, helping them kind of build up their repertoire of sounds using those like early play sounds and early sound imitation activities. And then we touched on this in the beginning, that social function of imitation. So, helping a child expand their repertoire of actions so that they can participate in the ways that they want to in play and in their routines as well. So, play-based imitation activities are my go-to, and that is kind of wherever a child is, whether it's they're working on imitating actions, which is usually where we would be first, or imitating gestures, or imitating simple sounds, or starting to imitate words. Every item has an action and a silly sound that goes with it. That's how we kind of like pair the action with the sound with the toy, and kind of like making it really fun, making it really engaging for them. I find that kids are really engaged by like the play sounds, symbolic noises, the exclamatory words. Those are all really fun. So kids are usually motivated in those play-based activities to try to imitate, and especially pairing it with the action is so effective. That's a huge one as far as like the play-based imitation piece. And then if a child is coming in with not a lot of, let's rephrase. If a child is coming in with a lot of support needs in this area, I would usually start with contingent imitation. This is where we imitate what they're doing to see if we can imitate what they're doing, whether it's body movements, actions with toys, vocalizations, and see if we imitate what they're doing, will they imitate what we just did? And then can we go back and forth and build kind of that back and forth interaction, and just build the understanding of what that looks like, what imitation looks like by imitating them first. And then I love contingent imitation as a strategy because we also know that it builds social engagement and increases social eye gaze. When we kind of join the child in what they're doing, copy what they're doing, it makes them more interested in us. Like, that is interesting. Like, wow, you're here with me and you're noticing me and you're doing what I'm doing. And that has been shown in the research to increase that social eye gaze and that engagement piece.
Very cool. I like that. It's the pre-linguistic version of like talking about what your friend wants to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and because like people like to talk about what they want to talk about,
Yes, yes.
I want to do this. Like, oh, you want to do this with me? Yeah, you're doing the same thing. Or sometimes if I've noticed, like, if kids it's a lot of more like body movements. They're like crawling around the ground or something, and then I start doing that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And they're like, what in the world are you? You're a grown up. What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
that kind of thing can really get their attention. And that's kind of what you're trying to get their attention.
Right.
Like, oh, you're doing what I'm doing, and sometimes it takes a moment and you're like,
yeah. I like that you gave that example of like talking about what your friend wants to talk about, because I mean, that's really what it's all about with emerging communicators is the relationship, like building the relationship. And that's like what you would do with your friend, right? Well, this is how you do that with a young child. This is how you have the conversation they want to have, is joining in on what they're doing, following their lead. And that kind of leads into our last point, I think, talking about like a strengths-based,
Yes.
relationship-based approach, because that was our last learning objective, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
yes, it is. Yeah, and we're good. Yeah, we're
Okay.
good on time too. So the last the components of strength-based
Yeah.
approach. Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of just touched on this, but in my mind, the way I'm conceptualizing this, a strengths-based approach with young emerging communicators is very closely aligned to a relationship-based approach. And a relationship-based approach is built on connection, mutual respect and dignity, and honoring autonomy at its core. So we've talked about kind of like the importance of connection, building connection, starting with that relationship, and a strengths-based approach with young children kind of puts that relationship at the forefront. So that's number one. It's also, we're incorporating interests and building on their strengths. We've talked about that a couple times now. Noticing what they're interested in, incorporating that as much as possible, and noticing what they're already doing well and building on that. And one of the ways I think it's important to kind of help some caregivers make that shift too, to like focus on what do we already have going well here, and then okay, that's what we're going to build on, instead of thinking about like, oh, what skills are missing, what are the deficits, where are the delays, how far behind are we. Like, no, let's talk about what's going well, and then let's talk about where we can build from there. And just shifting that, even with the caregiver perspective, can make a huge difference as well. And then finally, being really specific about the support you're going to provide to help the child be successful. So we talked about how when we're working with emerging communicators, so much of it is about changing what we're doing as a communication partner. So even in my goals, when I'm writing a goal for these young emerging communicators, children under 4 who do not have established functional communication yet, their goals are going to each have some sort of support strategy that is associated with helping them be successful with that goal. So like the child will imitate actions in nursery songs when a model is provided, along with wait time and an expectant look to see if they can imitate. So really being specific, even when you're writing the goal, about what supports are going to help this child be successful in that goal.
I love that specific example. I love hearing what people write as like as specific goals.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Very cool. Awesome. Well, this has been so great. Was that the last thing on that point? I think it was on our
Yeah.
This was all so, I feel like this was very thorough and very wonderful. Such good information, such valuable, actionable suggestions and tips and stuff. If those of you who are listening live, if this is the replay, we'll just let you know what happened. But if you do have a question or even want to say hi, you can drop a question in the chat. If you see that, I think it might be on the right side of those of you who are live right now. I'll wait just a minute and see if there are. We have lots of we have thank you. This was so helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, you guys. I wait and see if anyone does have a specific question. I will just mention to everyone to make sure, if you aren't already, following Laura on her Instagram at Early and Bright SLP. And also you can go to her website, earlyandbrightslp.com. You can click on, there's different resources. You can see all of her courses, and you can see all of her, or you can make a login. Is that right, Laura? You can make a login to get free resources.
Yes.
Which are beautiful visuals. Do it, everyone. It's great. I'm on your list, of course. And then also just a reminder that now that you have listened to this whole thing, you might as well get some credit, right? We all need those continuing education hours. You can click on the link in the show notes, everyone listening to the replay. And then if you are live, you will get email, or you can just go to my website. The course page is the most recent one. And you can purchase the course quiz. It's a small processing fee. And then you take the quiz and get your certificate. You hold on to that certificate. If you are a Tisha member, you can fill out the Tisha form and I can send it to Tisha. I do not send to the ASHA registry. That is specifically for ASHA's brand, ASHA CEUs. But ASHA approves professional development hours. So just hold on to your certificate. I get emails all the time about that. So I'm trying to be more specific. You just put that certificate in a little folder on your computer or screenshot it. It also will live. You can always log into my website and see your certificates there if you even as a backup. It's always there for you. Let's see. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone's saying thank you. Awesome. I really think you explained everything so well that maybe there are no specific questions. But wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura. I really enjoyed this, and I hope everyone got lots of information out of this.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for having me, and thanks everyone who was able to join us live.
Thanks. All right. Bye.
Bye.